Calls it a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno, as we are every Sunday night, though. Matt, this Sunday night, not exactly a typical Sunday night. The Dodgers down 1-0 in the NLDS, and even that doesn't really seem to do it justice.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a weird day, weird setup for us. Obviously, we make this show a regular thing Sunday nights, and we're in the playoffs coming off of a shocking loss, maybe is the best way I could describe it now. I know we're going to get into it a little bit before looking ahead. And it's also just odd because this NLDS is still at Dodger Stadium, but there was an off day between games 1 and 2, which is new this year. And so just kind of everything's just a little bit different right now.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, the weird schedule. Obviously, the Dodgers having been off for a few days, so we've only had one Dodger game in the last, 7 days, and it was over immediately. I mean, the Clayton Kershaw, obviously, everybody who's watching this show knows what happened. First pitcher, I believe they said in Major League history to allow the first 5 batters to reach with hits. It's the first time in Clayton Kershaw's career he did not make it through the first inning. The Dodgers are down 9-0 before we're even halfway through the second inning, and that was basically a wrap. So, Matt, we'll start with just 24 hours later as you process what you witnessed in person last night at Dodger Stadium. How are we feeling? Are you feeling better about things? Are you feeling worse about things? Where are you at?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't necessarily had time to really sit down and give it a whole ton of thought. It still feels like a little bit like a blur in a whirlwind. You and I have been in the same camp of, hey, Kershaw showed enough improvement down the stretch of the regular season that's starting him in game 1 was warranted and justified. And it wasn't this huge stretch. And, even with factoring in some regression, I think last week when I was on here, I predicted, maybe he gets into like the 5th inning, goes 4 1/3, something like that, and that was with allowing potentially 2 or 3 runs, right? And that would be the quote unquote regression maybe from the regular season. And so to see it unfold the way it did was just, it honestly gave me a little bit of a flashback to when I was sitting in the Petco Park press box last year and the Padres were, sort of hitting their way to their win late in game 4. And yeah, I mean, fortunately it is just one loss. And so that's kind of what you hang your hat on. Then on a personal level for me, I was watching USC try to beat an Arizona team that they had no business being in the back and forth game. And so yesterday was just, crazy day, crazy night.
Yeah, I joked on Twitter. I had a massive work event for my other job and was actually away from a TV and away from my phone for basically 4 hours. And that was God's gift to me, I think, to not, at one point I went and checked the score. It was 9-0. I said, well, that sucks. And I'm glad I'm missing this, I guess is the bottom line. There was a part of me that was sad to miss the pre and post game show. And there was another part of me that was very glad I didn't have to do a post game show last night because, it just, as I was explaining to somebody tonight, I have such a appreciation for Clayton Kershaw as a player and as a person that I almost take it more personally that it happened to Clayton Kershaw than I do that it happened to the Dodgers. Like, it hurts me more that Kershaw had to endure this than it did the Dodgers as a team had to endure this, as weird as that sounds. And so I feel for the guy. I mean, this is a guy who had made 8 appearances since coming off the injured list. He had allowed 9 runs in 8 appearances. So I know there's going to be a lot of people now taking a victory lap and saying, I told you Clayton Kershaw never should have been starting game 1, yada, yada, yada. He had allowed 9 runs in 8 games. And my point would be, even if you thought he was going to regress, nobody was predicting 6 runs in a third of an inning. Like you said, if it was 3 runs in 4 innings, I think that would have been in line with the people who said he was going to regress. And I, even as somebody who was a huge supporter of Clayton Kershaw, would not have been surprised by 3 runs in 4 innings, 3 runs in 5 innings, something along those lines. What happened yesterday was crazy. And look, Kershaw said afterwards, I made some terrible pitches. This wasn't a health thing. His velocity seemed to be, by the standards that we are now accustomed to, quote unquote, fine. It was just the command that wasn't awesome. He kept missing spots. And on top of that, as Will Smith said afterwards, the Diamondbacks just hit everything. So it was a perfect storm. And we're going to get into the decision about whether or not Clayton Kershaw should be starting game 4 if they get there. But for me, as I sort of bring this full circle, I feel better today than I did when I went to sleep last night because it's one game. Was it a horrific, ugly game? Yes. But if you were worried about the Dodgers not being awake, they're awake now. They got punched in the face last night. There's not going to be any sleepwalking through game 2. And so it's a 5-game series. I would have loved to have won game 1. They lost. How they lost today doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean that and that's exactly what Freddie Freeman said. He said, if it's 11-2, 2-1, it's one loss no matter what. It could have been 20-0, and it's still just going to give the Diamondbacks one win in the series. And so now the Dodgers have a chance to, sort of bounce back. I agree with you. I think Kershaw has taken his lumps in the postseason, and for me, some of those and some of the criticism is a little bit unjust because of kind of the different scenarios that he's been put in. Yeah. And asked to pitch in for the Dodgers throughout the years, and now's not the time to really rehash all that stuff. But game 1, honestly, is different from the sense that, look, I know what he is saying, I know what Dave Roberts is saying, but he is pitching injured. And there's a difference between, not necessarily being 100%, maybe kind of hurting, being a little achy, and doing what he's doing. He has a significant shoulder injury. Like, there's no two ways about it, and he's not going to blame his performances on that because that's just that most athletes won't, and especially him. He's not somebody to make excuses. But last night doesn't really fall into, oh, look at it's Kershaw struggling in the playoffs again. Like, it's a completely set of different circumstances. And, it was a rough one. It was the timing of it obviously is I don't know if any loss in the playoffs is ever good timing, but timing. Especially game 1, it's particularly not necessarily what you want. But hey, like you said, and Freddie Freeman has said, and Dave Roberts said today, during their workout, it's just one game, and now they had an off day today. They were, kind of back together. The mood around the stadium was definitely upbeat. Like, the team is not like shell shocked the way I think they were last night, and we'll get into some of that. And so now you just look forward to game 2, and you take it one game at a time.
Yeah, and look, I see people saying, hey, he had a 4.5 ERA for his career in the postseason, which is true. A 4.5 ERA is 3 earned runs in 6 innings. So even if you thought, oh, Kershaw stinks in the playoffs, he's been 3 earned runs in 6 innings bad in the playoffs, not 6 earned runs in 1/3 of an inning bad. So my point is, even if you were predicting a Kershaw regression, for anybody to take a victory lap saying they saw what we saw last night, that they saw that coming, anyways, I don't know. I won't believe you, I guess is the bottom line here. The big news, though, in light of all this, and based on our comments, I could tell some people aren't going to be happy to hear this or be reminded about this, is that if I'm not mistaken, Dave Roberts has come out and said if we get to game 4, Clayton Kershaw is starting. It would be on what is normal rest for most starting pitchers, but not Clayton Kershaw. He has not pitched on normal rest since coming off the injured list in August. What we just saw last night was atrocious. Obviously, he said it himself, so we're not breaking news there. How do you feel, Matt, about the idea that the Dodgers have already come out and said he's starting game 4 if we get there? I don't think either of us are surprised. But the fact that Dave Roberts was so adamant and stated it as clearly as he did this early, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not surprised by it. We talked about it before the NLDS started, kind of mapping out the pitching plan. And I said I would hold Kershaw for a potential game 5 instead of 4, short of maybe if the season's on the line type thing in game 4. It doesn't seem like they want it, like they're interested in doing that. And I think some of that stems from there appears to be a plan. I mean, Dave Roberts said again today that they don't have game 3 pitching plans set. I think what can be assumed is Lance Lynn and Ryan Pepiot are going to both probably pitch in game 3.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, maybe Pepiot is prepared to be available if Lance Lynn has a short start or if he's struggling and they need to go to somebody early. Because now, Kershaw, as much as the Dodgers were sort of anticipating a shorter outing, it certainly was not 1 out. I think they were thinking worst case scenario, he gets them three innings, right?
Yeah.
And as the bullpen still is in decent shape considering some of the guys went multiple innings, and so I'm a little worried with Kershaw on the game 4 start. It has nothing to do with how game 1 went. It's more just the regular rest component. Now, when you factor in, obviously hindsight is 2020 a little bit, to see how he pitched in game 1. Let's remember, Chase Field has historically not been very kind to him.
Yeah.
And so when you factor that in, when you factor the regular rest for the first time in a few months, I think there's some reason for concern. But Dave Roberts said today that I think their only option and their best option was how he worded it.
Yeah, because to sort of solidify what you're saying, option 1 is Kershaw pitches game 4. Option 2 is Lance Lynn pitches game 3, and Ryan Pepiot pitches game 4, or flip those two, right? I mean, you could go Bobby Miller in game. No, because Bobby Miller couldn't do two. He could do 2 and 5.
Too short.
So basically, what we're deciding between is, I would say Lance Lynn, who would be 4th on my pecking order if I were choosing, is would I rather have Clayton Kershaw starting a game 4, or would I rather have Lance Lynn starting game 4? And again, I'm looking at our comments. People are going to hate this. I would take Clayton Kershaw over Lance Lynn. Clayton Kershaw had a bad start, atrocious start. The sample size of 8 starts we had seen from him was not perfect. It was not flawless. We can talk about stuff and velocity, all of it. Lance Lynn is not good, like in my opinion. And so I personally, Matt, would still take Clayton Kershaw over Lance Lynn.
I think I would probably lean with you. I think some of that would be a little bit of like emotional decision, just because it is Clayton Kershaw and he's a Dodger through and through, and what he's meant to the franchise, and seeing all his different successes and struggles. And also some of it is just logic. Like if the Dodgers season is on the line, whether if let's say game 4, the season is on the line for whatever reason, like there's no way Clayton Kershaw is not pitching. And I understand he's not going to allow the Dodgers to do that. The Dodgers probably aren't going to do that. And, I do agree with you. I think, Lance Lynn worries me a little bit. I mean, Lance Lynn worries me in the postseason, and especially, Arizona. I know that they've sort of, they have the humidor, and so home runs aren't necessarily flying out the way they used to, but he's been prone to them. And so, like I said on last week when we were sitting here, I would not have Lance Lynn pitching. If the Dodgers season is on the line, I would not have Lance Lynn making that start. Now, depending on what happens Monday, obviously, like we don't know if that's going to be the case for a game 3 when Lynn might start, but it could, if you don't start him in game 3, it could end up being game 4 is your potential, season's on the line. And then at that point, like I don't see them, not going away from Kershaw for Lance Lynn.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused by like I'm being accused, less so you, more so me, of blind faith in Kershaw, giving a guy a legacy start in the playoffs. Like, do we think something dramatically bad happened to Clayton Kershaw between his last start in the regular season and the playoffs? Like you and I don't think anything material changed. If you look at Clayton Kershaw's last 3 starts in the regular season, we're talking about a guy who pitched 14 innings, I believe it was, over 3 starts, 14 and a third innings over 3 starts. He allowed basically a base runner an inning. He struck out a base runner an inning, and he allowed 2 runs. So, like, the idea that we're just basing this on blind faith and like, well, whatever, just Clayton Kershaw, anyone. I mean, the guy was good. Like, again, not perfect. If you're comparing the current version of Clayton Kershaw to Hall of Fame peak Clayton Kershaw, then fine. But like the idea that all folks are looking at Lance Lynn of all people and saying, yeah, that's the guy I want. Like the blind faith is in Clayton Kershaw, not in Lance Lynn. I mean, I'm fine. I'll handle being called a homer. Like I love Clayton Kershaw. Everybody knows that. And yet I'm still like, I'm making this decision based on the box scores that I'm looking at and the pitching that I've seen from a guy over the last 2 months who has just limited runs versus a guy in Lance Lynn who hasn't done it at any point. And yes, Clayton Kershaw was atrocious last night, but I think it's more ridiculous to make a rash decision based on 1 start yesterday than it would be to make a decision based on his ability to perform over the last couple of months. And again, apparently that's not a popular take, and that's fine. That's the beauty of shows like this. Like, I don't have to agree with everybody, and that's why I enjoy the dialogue. I enjoy the engagement back and forth. I'm just looking at a sample size of the last 2 months and saying 1 start, 1 bad inning, 7 batters is not going to change my opinion of Clayton Kershaw more so than 8 appearances over the last 2 months.
Yeah, and I think another factor too, and I just saw somebody comment, I think it was Volley. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Another factor is the Dodgers also, like, what other choice is there? Like, yes, theoretically, maybe Lance Lynn. If Lance Lynn starts game 3 and Ryan Pepiot isn't used for whatever reason, then okay, he's available for a game 4. But then, like, again, if it's a lot of this is if right now and hypothetical. First of all, the Dodgers need to get a game 4 isn't even guaranteed. So a lot of fans getting upset about Clayton Kershaw possibly starting that game. Here, I'll throw another wrench at you. What if there is not a game 4? Like, then what?
It's possible.
Like, that is mathematically possible right now. So
yeah,
but let's say it gets there, because I don't see the Dodgers being swept. There just aren't a ton of options, and it's kind of the situation. It sort of is what it is right now. In a perfect world, obviously Kershaw's shoulder would be healthier than it is. In a perfect world, maybe the Dodgers would have more pieces to their starting rotation, and he's possibly your like game 2 or 3 starter that you only needed him once in the NLDS, and now you're not necessarily having to figure this out. But it's kind of the situation the Dodgers are in, and I can understand why fans are up in arms over the thought of Kershaw starting another postseason game because of what just happened. But again, I think that was a significant outlier. I don't think, he's not somebody who has gone out there every postseason game and given up 8 runs and pitched 3 innings or fewer every single time. Like that hasn't happened. And so, when you factor everything in, it's the situation the Dodgers find themselves in.
Yep. No, I'm with you. And again, nobody here is saying that Clayton Kershaw is fully healthy, that this is prime Clayton Kershaw. Nobody here was expecting, 6 no-hit shutout innings from Clayton Kershaw yesterday. We just weren't expecting a third of an inning and 6 earned runs. And if you fast forward me to game 4 and the Dodgers get there, I'm still not going to be expecting a third of an inning and 6 earned runs. I'm still going to be expecting him to get me 4 innings, and maybe it's 2 earned runs, which isn't perfect and isn't, the most ideal scenario in the history of the world. But that's the 4.5 ERA that everybody's touting as his career postseason ERA. And at this point, I think you would take that. The counterpoint sort of, or I should say, the point next to all of the things we're talking about, Matt, is the offense. The offense didn't score for the Dodgers. They added 2 runs in the 8th inning. Do you think this was a Dodgers team that watched what happened to Clayton Kershaw in the first 7 batters and just, checked out is a strong word, but maybe just got mentally taken out of the game by what they saw, by being down 9-0 by the top of the 2nd inning? Or do you think there's some real concern for you as far as the Dodgers offense not performing against the guy in Merrill Kelly, by the way, that they had kind of owned all season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pull the Scotty card this early into the show, but a little bit of both. I'll kind of go down the middle. I'm concerned because we've seen this in the past with some of the same, as much as there's been, the roster has changed this season. A lot of the prominent stars from last year, I'll reference just because it's the most recent postseason compared to now, are still around. And we saw this. We've seen this before. So that's where some concern is. I do agree that, the way Kershaw got hit, like it was very quick in the 1st inning, and then the Diamondbacks added 3 more runs in the 2nd inning. Like, I think the Dodgers were shell-shocked a little bit, and, kind of a standing 8 count at that point. And not that they necessarily mailed it in, but, there was, I think, a haze maybe that set over them when they were up at the batter's box. But yeah, I mean, look, like whether Kershaw gave up 6 runs yesterday in 1 inning, or 6 runs over 3 innings, or 4 or 5 runs, like the Dodgers were going to have to score. And frankly, moving forward, if they want to advance in the postseason, they're going to have to score because their pitching just isn't necessarily what it has been in years past. Yeah. And so their path to a World Series is by hitting. And so, like you said, Kershaw's getting a lot of the blame for that poor start, and it certainly didn't help, beginning things on that note. But yeah, the offense, it wasn't like I told you before, we kind of jumped on, we were sort of kicking things around. Like, had the Dodgers responded maybe with 2 runs in the bottom of the 1st inning, it might have been like, okay, like, it's only 6-2. We have a full game still ahead of us. Like, we're still within striking distance, a walk, a base hit, another home run, and you're right back in it, right? Even a 2-run home run, like you cut your deficit in half again. But yeah, I mean, the offense they're definitely going to be under a microscope, I think, for game 2.
So are you concerned?
A little bit.
Okay. Because you would have just liked to have seen more.
Right. Like they had a chance early on. Like I said, you have your top of the lineup coming up in the bottom of the 1st inning. So to have seen, Mookie Betts gets a single or a walk or just reaches base and they get something going, like that would have been encouraging. And again, like as much as, year to year stuff doesn't necessarily always translate, the Dodgers, one way or another, seem to have players who tend to go cold in the postseason for whatever reason. And so because of that history, coupled with just, maybe end Mookie's lull in September to kind of close out the year. Like I'm a little worried about the offense.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I mean, 9 of the 10 hardest hit balls yesterday came off the bat of the Arizona Diamondbacks. 5 of those were in that first inning, by the way. Not all against Kershaw, for what it's worth. Some of those were against by the time Emmett Sheehan had come into the game. But okay, let's flush game 1 and let's move on to game 2. They're down 1-0. We can stop thinking about and dwelling on how they got to down 1-0. The question is, what do they do going forward? We got Bobby Miller on the mound for the Dodgers, Zach Gallen on the mound for the Diamondbacks. We've been over this. Zach Gallen, like Merrill Kelly, has not had success against the Dodgers in 2023. He made 2 appearances against the Dodgers, March 30th and August 28th. So obviously 5 months between those. But in those 2, it was 10 combined innings pitched, 15 hits, 11 earned runs, 6 walks, and 10 strikeouts. So 10 innings, 10 strikeouts, good. 10 innings, 11 runs, 15 hits, 6 walks, all very, very bad for Zach Gallen. On the flip side, Bobby Miller faced the Diamondbacks twice, August 9th and August 28th. So again, Gallen versus Miller. This has happened before, August 28th. And Bobby Miller, 12 innings, 11 hits, 4 earned, 6 walks, 8 strikeouts. So not perfect from Bobby Miller, but based on those numbers, you don't feel terrible about Bobby Miller, and you do feel like the Dodgers might be able to get to Zach Gallen. So when you look at this matchup, knowing what we know about how game 1 played out, give me sort of your outlook and what are the keys to the game for the Dodgers?
Yeah, so I think the first one is probably easiest to get to point to is Bobby Miller, just because obviously the Dodgers are the home team, so he's going to be pitching before they hit. I think it could go, I could see it easily going one of 2 ways. Either the postseason atmosphere sort of get to Bobby as much as he's trying to maybe control his emotions, and there's some early walks that could lead to, either high pitch count or Diamondbacks potentially taking another early lead, or he'll, really be able to channel everything and keep his focus and pitch well. And we've seen him do that in big games. This is obviously the biggest game of his career now to this point. So I think I don't know if I want to call him the biggest key, but if he's not 1A, he's like 1B, because like I said, he's going to be out there before anything else happens.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I think this does come down to Bobby Miller and what they can get out of him. And again, much like Clayton Kershaw, I'm not expecting 6 no-hit shutout innings, I'm just saying, can you get 4 innings and 1 earned run, 5 innings and 2 earned? Like, that's just where we are with the Dodgers pitching staff, is the expectations have been adjusted. It's not necessarily be perfect. It's keep them in the game, because if you can get to the 6th inning and the game is tied, then it's advantage Dodgers, who have a deeper bench, who have more platoon advantages, and who have a much better bullpen. The question is, can Bobby Miller hang with Zach Gallen in this one? If it's not Bobby Miller, obviously the key is going to be the offense. You look at the box score in game 1, Will Smith, who both of us predicted as the guy that we think might be an X factor, 2 for 4. He did have a hit in that first inning and then got the RBI single in the 8th inning, RBI triple in the 8th inning. So he's 2 for 4, but you look, the 1 spot, the 2 spot, the 4 spot, the 5 spot, and the 6 spot all had zeros in the hit column next to them. Now, Mookie Betts walked once, Freddie Freeman walked twice, JD Martinez had a walk himself. So not all bad, but they're going to need more from those guys offensively. And so we'll see. Will Smith, again, is a guy who has hit Zach Gallen well in the past. Most of the Dodgers, though, have not, whereas they had good stuff against Merrill Kelly as far as historically. Offensively, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, the rest of these guys have been somewhere between bad to good, but not great against Zach Gallen, which makes sense because Zach Gallen's a really, really good pitcher. And so I think the key for the Dodgers is, can Bobby Miller keep them in it? And can the Dodgers offense get enough runs on the board to eventually pull it? I mean, like, for me, the number is 5. I need 5 runs scored by the Dodgers in any of these games. Otherwise, my focus is really going to be on the offense.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, look, like you said, Merrill Kelly's stats against the Dodgers weren't great going into the postseason, and things flipped. And so, as much as you can look at regular season and just career history as possible predictors, like, ultimately you never really know. And so the Dodgers could now be due to have their breakout game. Like, as much as I'm worried about the offense, I don't necessarily think they're going to be shut out. And Will Smith didn't hit that triple, I think, until the 8th inning. So yeah, I don't think they'll score just 2 runs per game. And if they do, then, it's like you said, like the pitching's it's not going to matter what the pitchers did, frankly. At that point, it'll be squarely on the offense.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're still at home. I think there's seeing the players after game 1 and again today at the workout and hearing from Dave Roberts, like confidence isn't necessarily shaken, which like it shouldn't be. It is just one game. And now you just, you need to see your stars. I think to quote Scott, your stars be stars.
Yeah. And look, this is where it's nice to have guys like Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Jason Hayward, David Peralta. I mean, some of these guys have been through some wars and come out the other side. Not all of them have had postseason success necessarily, but a Jason Hayward type, a Freddie Freeman type, Mookie Betts, these are guys that can stand up in the clubhouse and say, hey, we've lost game 1s before and been okay, And so whether or not the Dodgers as a group can come back from that remains to be seen. But this is the type of crew that I would like to have in the room. We've got a super chat from just a wonderfully named account, not Jeff Spiegel. It's got a picture to go with it. My guy, Will Smith, holding my face. I appreciate that. Pointing out that the Dodgers won game 1 against the Padres last year. So there you go. Some confidence for us, Matt. The Dodgers won game 1 last year, and that was it. So we're just going to reverse the script this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that's the message he was getting at, because I don't know what else what there would be to say about that NLDS series that I certainly have not forgotten. I know a lot of other people clearly haven't as well.
Yeah, we got another super chat from Trust Genius. Dodgers will be fine tomorrow, but we cannot have Kershaw in game 4. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the super chat, Trust Genius. I don't understand the disrespect that Clayton Kershaw gets. I know he was terrible yesterday. Like, maybe in 2 months, we'll do like a 45-minute breakdown of why his ERA is the way that it is and the situations that he has been placed in because the Dodgers failed to build around him. They failed to put him into situations in which he would succeed. Like, at some point that will come. Okay. And I'm not saying he's been perfect in the postseason, but the disrespect for a guy who is one of the greatest pitchers of all time, who is an absolute icon in Los Angeles, and who, by the way, has been like an unbelievable representation of the team and the franchise, which you can't say about a whole bunch of guys that have worn Dodger uniforms of late, unfortunately. So I don't know. Again, we appreciate the super chat. I just don't get the Kershaw hate, Matt. Like, why is he the lightning rod for so much of this?
I think some of it just comes with the territory of being a franchise player. You get the good and bad, and unfortunately he gets a lot of the bad when it is bad. And again, like we touched on earlier, like if you don't want Kershaw, if you're worried about his history at Chase Field or whatnot, like I'm willing to like listen to that. But what other option? Like there's not a clear-cut alternative that is a better choice at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. It's sort of, it's wild to me. But anyways, we've spent enough time talking about that, and I don't think anybody's going to change anybody's mind tonight. So Michael says we just need to bring back corporal punishment for underperformers. We're not advocating for that. Michael's advocating for that. Thank you for the super chat, though, Michael. We greatly appreciate it. Let's get to some questions. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about game 1 or about game 2. We've kind of broken these games down in great detail. Is there any other sort of keys to the game, if you will, for game 2? We've talked about the offense. We've talked about Bobby Miller and sort of the load placed on his shoulders. Do you think that there's like a piggyback situation here? Or do you think it's Bobby Miller and then just a normal approach to the bullpen?
Yeah, I'm anticipating a normal start, just obviously with, you hope maybe Bobby can give them 5-ish innings. The good news is, as much like I alluded to earlier, as much as Kershaw's start was a disaster, they got multiple innings from obviously Sheehan, Grove, Shelby Miller. And so I think that helped. And then there was the off day. And so that helped, kind of leave the bullpen still in good standing. My guess is maybe only one of Ferguson or Vesia pitches in game 2 if they need the lefty, and then they try to save the other one for a game 3 or just, later down the line. But yeah, I mean, I think it should be, no limitations really on Bobby Miller, other than, Dave Roberts is a firm believer of postseason. Like, pitch count in postseason is different than in the regular season because the adrenaline, the emotions. And so 60 pitches in October is not the same as 60 in, June. Yeah. And so because of that, maybe Bobby Miller has a little bit of a shorter start than might be normal. But look, like there's a school of thought that it's better to take a pitcher out too early than too late in the playoffs, and so I think if anything, that's what we would see.
Yeah, we get this question from Jay on Facebook. What happens if Miller struggles early? Like, do you think because of what happened to Kershaw, do you think the leash is way shorter for Bobby Miller? Or do you think the Dodgers kind of need to let him eat some innings, even if that means trying to pitch through some difficult spots?
Oh man, yeah, it's tough because you can't necessarily have him wear it per se because it is the postseason, and if you lose another game, then you're going down 2-0, and that like I view tomorrow as as close to a must win if it's not a flat out must win. But yeah, I mean, if he struggles early, I think it depends on how it happens. If it's walks, then they might come with an early hook. If it's maybe some just bad luck, a couple hits, they might try to let him pitch his way out of it.
Yeah, that's fair. Lewis wants to know, question, any thoughts on the NLDS format? Curtis Granderson pointed out the Dodgers and Braves accounted for 9 hits combined. Those are the 2 teams that had extended time off prior to game 1. Look, you'd obviously not want to be playing in the wild card round. I tend to think that just, we're grasping for straws here. I think playoff baseball is random. I think the fact that the Dodgers and Braves lost proves that far more than that the off days are a really big deal. That's my 2 cents. But what do you think, Matt?
I mean, look, the Astros won the World Series last year, and I'm pretty sure they had the off days before the postseason started also. And so there is a level of randomness. I think there are certain things that teams can do maybe to better prepare themselves. Last year, like the Dodgers weren't happy with how they went about, not necessarily happy, but Dave Roberts said he believed in their work last year, but there were, ways they could improve it, which is a philosophy that the Dodgers apply to everything. Every single year, Dave Roberts is looking to get better. Andrew Friedman says he's looking to get better. And so they made some changes this year, allowing fans, doing more situational stuff. I think this is still, we're only 2 years into this format. I think as teams get more comfortable, it might help, or you might see some of the trends reversing. I'll save my thoughts we'll see how this series goes, and then I'll save my thoughts on kind of NLDS off day preparation, because as much as the Dodgers did change some things, I felt like there were still some holes that needed to be shored up.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And, look, obviously there's the sample size is small right now. So there's more to be written on that front as well. This is a question from TQT. Kershaw had a 108 stuff plus rating before his IL stint. It dropped to 83 after his return. His stats were fine, but analytics didn't match his stats. How did we miss this? Blind faith in Kershaw's name, ? I don't know. I don't think we missed it. I mean, I don't think anybody was on here saying that Clayton Kershaw was the same guy before and after. My question has always just been, who's the alternative? And people point to Bobby Miller and talking about, I'm sure his stuff plus number is really good. And I'm not diminishing stuff plus, by the way. I'm sure it's really good. Bobby Miller also, if you look back on his last 5 starts, he gave up 12 runs in those 5 starts. So, do you want to make pitching decisions based on a stuff plus number or on the number of runs you gave up in the last month? Matt, I think I know your answer, but I mean, again, I'm not trying to poo-poo any of this stuff. I'm just saying, I think the image people have of me in their mind is that I think Clayton Kershaw was going to throw a no-hitter. And I'm just saying, I didn't think he was going to be perfect, but I didn't think he was going to be awful either. It sounds like a lot of people thought he was going to be awful, which you were right. I just don't know what we're comparing him to. The idea that Lance Lynn is a dramatically better option than Clayton Kershaw. None of those people were in our comments 4 days ago saying that Lance Lynn was a dramatically better option. Again, I was the only person suggesting Pepio probably belonged in the top 2 conversation and not fighting for Lance Lynn in 3. And so I don't know. Do you think we missed this? Is this a fair assessment that people weren't paying attention to how bad Kershaw looked with the eye test over the past month and a half? Or how do you see this?
I don't know. I mean, I think an unfortunate reality of Kershaw struggling was the extent that he did and how it ended up going. Because look, even somebody, and I'm sure I've seen Blake kind of commenting in the chat, amongst the 3 of us, with Blake included, he's been the most skeptical and hesitant with starting Kershaw in game 1, I think is a fair assessment. Sure. But even Blake on the postgame show last night and telling us, in our conversations in our group chat, even he didn't expect like the regression to be this bad. And so like that's my thing. Like it's Monday morning quarterback to sit here and say it was so bad, we should have seen this coming. Like I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Was there enough reason to be concerned with Kershaw starting in game one? Sure. But was Bobby Miller a clearly superior alternative to Kershaw? Not necessarily, because then there are other factors that are still going to be the case for a game two. It is his postseason debut. So then you would have been talking about a series opener, and like stuff like that becomes a factor too. And so like, again, I appreciate, I know TQT is honest with us every week. And so we appreciate the engagement and the question. I just think like with Kershaw specifically, a lot of it is after the fact with how it went, because again, I didn't see anybody, as much as skepticism as we had, I didn't see people saying Kershaw wasn't going to make it out of the first inning.
Well, and even Blake, who again, to be fair, has been pretty consistent with how he's felt about Kershaw. Even he on our Sunday show last week, or our preview show, I should say, what was that, Friday night? Said, I feel way better. Way is probably strong. He felt better, more optimistic about Clayton Kershaw but again, it's a point. Speaking of Blake, I'll let you have this one. Would Kershaw have been better if Austin Barnes started?
Yes, I think Kershaw gets through the first inning if Austin Barnes is catching him.
Yeah, because apparently, I thought it was his stuff plus, Matt, that was the problem last night.
Right. No, well, not for me. I don't. Any stat with a plus at the end, I'm not paying attention to it.
I thought it was his velocity, his command. I didn't realize it was the guy behind the plate that was the issue. So my apologies. Bob Nightingale, I miss Blake per sources. Blake will be back tomorrow. Unfortunately for me, my work schedule and the NLDS are not friends. Those two things do not line up perfectly. And so Blake is going to be helping cover. Well, look, if we make it to the NLCS, my schedule opens up, but now I'm more skeptical today that we're going to make it to that point. So shout out to Daniel and Blake for holding it down last night. Blake, Scott, Matt, we got all sorts of people covering. I'll be here for the pregame show. Excuse me, for the pregame show tomorrow night. I'll be on pregame, but not postgame. So there we go. Let's see. Do we have any more questions here? Somebody asking what my job is outside the Dodgers. Another conversation for a different day. As
you're scrolling, I did see. I think it was Michael might have said that Blake needs to be on here because he's more positive than us two that we look down. I enjoyed that one because Blake knows this. Like I think I'm kind of in the middle between you and Blake, but you and Blake have been at opposite ends throughout much of the season, especially now. And so it's just funny to see a comment like that.
Fernando, good question here. What about Emmett Sheehan's performance? Do you still have confidence in him coming in relief? He seemed to struggle through a lot of pitches. Michael Grove gave up a run. Alex Vesia gave up a run. Was there anybody post Kershaw that you would say you feel better or worse about after one game?
Not really. I will say that honestly, one silver lining to that game going the way it went was that Emmett Sheehan's postseason debut was literally nothing to lose. Just go out there and pitch. I think that's much better than him. Well, not better for the team, but there would have been a different set of challenges had Sheehan come in, in the fourth or fifth inning, and it's a 2-1 game, and he's needing to really keep it, at bay. So I thought, get your feet wet in the postseason this way, and then kind of continue going. And I am seeing people saying Shelby Miller did pitch well over his 2 innings. I thought those were some big outs for the Dodgers just to help them, avoid using at least one more relief pitcher.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Here we go. I like this. Optimism levels. Jeff high, Scott high, Daniel medium high, Matthew medium, Blake already moved on to 2024. I think they're being generous with medium for you. I mean, it's ebbed and flowed. I'd say heading into the postseason, I think medium was probably fair for you. I should say that. I think it's been below. I think medium was the high point for you on optimism on 2023.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
And I think just high. You could probably. There's probably a step above high, and that's probably where I was living for most of. They won 100.
Yeah,
games.
I think so. I will say though that after Friday's media availability, when I was leaving the stadium, kind of the competitiveness, okay, this is for real now. This is what everybody's sort of been waiting for. Did sort of kick in, and I found myself thinking okay, it's going to be fun. Dodgers should be okay, and they still might be. It was one game. It's just an unfortunate start to a short series.
Jedi Engineer asks, how do we get the bats going 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position last night? I mean, I shared my thoughts earlier. I take no stock in what happened offensively. I think when you send the face of your franchise out in game one of a series against the Diamondbacks and he does not make it out of the first for the first time in his career, and you are down 6-0 before you've ever taken an at bat, and then 9-0 before, the bottom 5 in your lineup ever taken at bat, I think you just chalk that one up to this was a weird night, and we're not going to put any stock in what we saw. That's my view. They were 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position. I believe. Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, and the one didn't come till the 8th inning for what it's worth as well. But I don't know. That my view is I just put no stock in last night, and you get the bats going by just, you could say positive. Hey, the top 3 guys reached base 5 times last night. Like if you want to spin this in the most positive view possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit more concerned about the offense. I think, the old adage is hitting is contagious. I do subscribe to that theory a little bit. And so I think if the Dodgers come up in the bottom of the first tomorrow and, Mookie gets the leadoff single, then I think we could see things kind of snowball for them quickly. I think if Gallen keeps them off the bases for the most part through the first 2-3 innings, that then it could potentially be headed towards another repeat.
Blake Williams, sources say Matt almost ate a Dodger dog last Wednesday. Can we confirm or deny?
Yeah, that is true.
Wow.
That was a workout day that they had, and I had a headache. I was pretty hungry. We were doing some work. They had Dodger dogs set up, I think with the chili and cheese also. And I told Blake I am pretty hungry. More than anything, I wanted to kick the headache, so I felt like I needed to eat something. But I held strong. I got wrapped up in.
You chose a headache over a Dodger dog?
Not so much that I ended up getting so consumed with getting videos and transcribing up that I kind of forgot I had a headache. And then at the end of the night, Blake and I went to the original Tommy's in downtown. So that I was glad that I held out for that.
Original Tommy's. My Dodger Stadium routine back in the day was the Tommy's right there by the stadium before the game. And just the best. Just standing at the counter, trying not to get chili cheese all over your white Dodgers jersey. There's nothing like that. Question here: did Roberts and Kershaw really think fans believe them that Kershaw is healthy? I mean, Roberts has at least hinted at that he's not healthy. His latest quote was that he's as healthy as he has been. Kershaw has just refused to acknowledge that he's injured. And I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking about this today because I was actually going to bring it up. Dave has been saying that this was the best Kershaw has felt in the past couple months.
Yeah.
So reading between the lines, that's not saying that he's healthy. It's just
right. That's a clear indication that the last couple months he has not been healthy.
But then, so I thought that was a point that I was going to bring up on our show tonight. When I was thinking ahead, what we were going to discuss. I was like, okay, try to sort of not explain it to the fans, but point it out. Because I think it is getting overlooked. But then today at the workout day, Dave Roberts is sitting there and he's, of course, getting questioned about Kershaw, his health and game 4 and all that. And then Dave goes out and says today that he's healthy. Now, I still think that is a little bit of semantics. I don't know honestly, I don't think that they're worried about what the fans believe in terms of that regard. I don't think that they're thinking, hey, I don't think Dave Roberts is thinking if I sit up at this podium and say Clayton Kershaw is healthy, are fans going to believe me or not? There's so many other, rightfully so, there's so many other concerns that they need to have their mind on. I will say Clayton Kershaw is not healthy, and I don't think that that's breaking news. He is pitching through a shoulder injury that is, I don't know what it is, but I have been told it is very significant. And so take that for what it will.
This is, yeah. Anyways, I see there's a comment that's saying Kershaw is selfish for pitching through an injury. Your thoughts on that, Matt?
I don't agree. I think he, again, during the final month of the regular season, he was pitching. Now, if Kershaw throughout September was giving up 10 runs every single time out, they would have put him on the IL and they just would have shut him down for the rest of the season. Right. They would have said, this isn't working. It wasn't Clayton Kershaw first half or Clayton Kershaw career expectations, but he did start to improve after the really bad outing against the Marlins. Statistically speaking, there's no denying that. And so, I think it's Kershaw being a competitor, wanting to pitch for the team, wanting to make himself available. And again, think about the starting rotation now. We're trying to figure out who would start game 3 or 4. If you take, and I know, I feel like a lot of this is because how game 1 went. Had he allowed 100%. Had he allowed 4 runs over 5 innings, over 6 innings, I don't think the uproar would be this bad.
Nope.
He didn't. Fine. But again, I feel like this is Monday morning quarterbacking. And if you take him out of this rotation, then what? Especially once you get into, and Dave Roberts said it today, to get to where we want to get to, we're going to need Clayton Kershaw to start games for us. And he can, and he will. Yeah. And that's just, it's where the situation, that's where, how things have broken for the team this season. Now, another show that, Blake has strong opinions on, I have sort of developed strong opinions on, are the Dodgers offseason planning and stuff like that. Like, that'll come at a different time. If you want to question that, I think that's fair, but that's not the time. Now is not the time for that.
I just don't know how you could know anything about who Clayton Kershaw is as a person and as a human being and make the claim that he's a guy who's pitching selfishly, a guy who's pitching on pride and ego. Like, those are 3 words that never belong in the same sentence as Clayton Kershaw, who he is on the field, who he is off the field. Clayton Kershaw is pitching through an injury because that's what the team needs him to do, because the team needs him. Now, does he want to pitch? Of course he does. He's a competitor, but he's only pitching because he recognizes that as they put together a rotation, he gives them a better chance to pitch, even in his greatly diminished state, than some of the other guys that they have. And I think that's really I don't know how that's controversial personally. And again, stuff plus all this stuff. Sure. He has been successful. He has gotten the job done as a starting pitcher for 2 months since coming back from the injured list. Not perfectly, but he's gotten it done. And so the idea that he's pitching selfishly, I just think that's crazy to me. It's crazy.
Right. And I think, again, athletes, it's not necessarily right, but if, why isn't he playing through a sore ankle or a sore hand or whatever the case is? They get criticized for not playing, right?
Yep.
And
that's the comment I just threw up here. Everyone getting upset at Kershaw overplaying hurt are the same people who are mad that Scherzer made himself unavailable for the Dodgers. It's a great point.
Right. And I have not competed, played in sports to nearly the same level as these guys. But when I was playing, if anything was kind of bothering, there was, if people want to give me a minute here, when I was a kid, dust scratched my cornea. And so I needed to have it covered up. They had to put treatment in it and stuff. It happened during the middle of the week. And then I had a Little League game that weekend. And I wanted to play. My mom wouldn't let me play. She said, you can't play with one eye. I said, no, I want to play. As a competitor, if you play sports, you want to, if you can play, you want to play. And that's where Kershaw is. And so, yeah, I don't agree with this being a selfish decision on his part. I think he's a competitor who wants to give literally his body, sacrifice his body for the team. And again, what other option do the Dodgers really have? I saw, some people saying Yarbrough. Look, there's a reason they left him off the roster for this matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Blake says rub some dirt on it. You've got gritty.
I tried. Yeah, I tried.
Yeah. The dirt was actually literally the problem. So that's not. This is maybe one solution where rubbing dirt on it may actually make things worse. Yeah. Anyways, I just thought that Bob Nightingale, whoever Bob Nightingale is, that comment I think was the perfect summation. No matter what Kershaw does, it's gonna be controversial.
That is Bob Nightingale, clearly.
Yeah. Apologies.
Big fan of the show.
Big fan, verified account from what I heard. But yeah, anyways, the offseason stuff and how we got to this point, as you said, that's a conversation for another day. This is who the Dodgers have, and we'll see how this one plays out. Bobby Miller on the mound for the Dodgers tomorrow night. As we said, we will have a pregame show. I will be on that show. I believe we're starting at 5:30. Tomorrow's another 6:07 start. So 5:45-ish. We'll be here on the Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube channel, so make sure you join us for that. We'll do a 20-25-minute pregame show leading up to first pitch, and then there will be some folks back doing a postgame show as soon as that one is over. We'll have that for all postseason games this year. Before we get out of here, because I know you'll be at the stadium covering tomorrow, you want to give us a prediction for how you see Game 2 going, Matt?
No. I'll give you a prediction tomorrow after the game.
Oh, come on. Boo this man.
Let's see. Oh, man.
You had the Dodgers sweeping the Diamondbacks, if I wasn't mistaken.
I did.
So we're totally off. You're not going to just go. Well, actually, did you say Dodgers in 4? Is that where you finally landed, or did you?
No,
say
I left it at the sweep, and I was wrong about that, and I also said whoever wins Game 1 will win the series. So there's. If I've already been wrong once, then I might as well just be wrong twice, right? I think the Diamondbacks pull one out tomorrow still.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got the Dodgers going down 2-0.
It'll be a closer game, but I think the Diamondbacks find a way to get a win, and then Blake and I head out to Arizona with daunting drive.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'll save my my prediction for tomorrow's pregame show. I do want to point out, by the way, that I threw out 2 of my best bets for game 1, and I know it's illegal in California, but both of them hit, Matt. Both of them hit. We had the Kershaw under 15.5 outs recorded. That one, unfortunately, covered a lot more comfortably than we were hoping for. And even we had Merrill Kelly under 5.5 strikeouts. I pointed out he hadn't had more than 4 in any start against the Dodgers. He went 6+ and still only got 5 strikeouts. So we cashed that one as well. So there we go. Hey, folks, we appreciate you joining us on a Sunday night here again. This is Dodger Heads Live presented by DodgerBlue.com. Make sure you do check out our YouTube channel. Many of you are already there. Go look at. We got tons of content from today as well as post game from yesterday. We will have more of that throughout the postseason. As Matt said, we have credentialed people that are in the locker room, home games and road games for this series. So tons of content coming your way for that. Make sure you check out DodgerBlue.com for all the latest news and notes, write-ups on those interviews, sound bites, that type of thing. As well, you can follow Matt at Matthew_Moreno on Twitter. You can find me at Jeff Spiegel on Twitter as well. We appreciate you joining us, folks. Enjoy the rest of your night. Be back with us tomorrow for game 2. Until then, go Dodgers.